decided to take a walk in the woods with my coffee, and found a deer right behind it. A good deer. He wanted to see what was going on with the Bible today. So, welcome back. I'm Travis. It's good to see you again. Bible coffee. We just got some crazy dreams last time. We're looking ahead into what God's got in store. And now today, we are going to see Joseph descend. Let's see what happens. Please remember that I'll be reading from the column on the right, the JPS Tanakh translation. The column on the left is the NRSV. You are invited to follow along on either side, or in your Bibles at home, or just listen as we read. When he reached Shechem, a man came upon him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, "What are you looking for?" He answered, "I'm looking for my brothers. Could you tell me where they're pasturing?" The man said, "They have gone from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph followed his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came close to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes that dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We can say, 'A savage beast devoured him.' We shall see what comes of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he tried to save him from them. He said, "Let's not take his life." Reuben went on, "Shed no blood. Cast him into that pit, out in the wilderness, but don't touch him yourselves," intending to save him from them and restore him to his father. When Joseph came up to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of the tunic, the ornamented tunic that he was wearing, and took him and cast him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to a meal. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels bearing gum, balm, and idanim to be taken to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What do we gain by killing our brother and covering up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, but let us not do away with him ourselves. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh." His brothers agreed. When Midianite traders passed by, they pulled Joseph up out of the pit. They sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who brought Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he rent his clothes. Returning to his brothers, he said, "The boy is gone. Now what am I to do?" Then they took Joseph's tunic, slaughtered a kid, and dipped the tunic in the blood. They had the ornamented tunic taken to their father, and they said, "We found this. Please examine it. It's your son's tunic, or not?" He recognized it and said, "My son's tunic. A savage beast devoured him. Joseph was torn by a beast." Jacob rent his clothes, put sackcloth on his loins, and observed mourning for his son many days. All his sons and daughters sought to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, saying, "No, I will go down mourning to my son in Sheol." Thus his father bewailed him. The Midianites, meanwhile, sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, a courtier of Pharaoh and his chief steward. The grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of the Lord lives forever, and this is the word of the Lord. All thanks be to God. Well, I'm not sure what happened to that deer, but we did just see what happened to Joseph, and that was pretty crazy. Why on earth would his brothers do that to him, even if they were mad at him, even if they hated him? Now, something very interesting that caught my attention about this passage that I wonder if it caught your attention, and I hope it did. If you remember last time, they were in the valley of Hebron, and that's where Jacob sent Joseph up from to go look for his brothers, as his brothers went there from the valley of Hebron. And they went up north to go shepherd the sheep and the flock. And they went up to Shechem. All right, so they went from a valley in Hebron, and remember, they had just escaped all the stuff that they did in Shechem, and they were down there in mourning, grieving, in the valley symbolic language of Hebron. And from that valley, the boys go up, these boys with a troubled history in Shechem, they go back up towards Shechem to be pasturing the flocks. Jacob, in his time of grief, sends his favored son Joseph up to Shechem to go look for him, see how they're doing, to bring him back reports, tell on him or whatever. And he does so. We have kind of an idea that this might not go well, since it's these boys who were last in Shechem did something terrible there, and now Jacob is sending Joseph up to Shechem to meet up with them, and they don't like him. So there's a clue. Things are not going to go well. And they don't. When he first gets up to Shechem, he finds a random man, says, "What are you looking for?" It's a good question. What is Joseph looking for? What's he hoping to get out of this venture? Is he just looking for his brothers, or is he looking to follow in the way that God was leading him, having given him these dreams and everything? So he goes up there, explains he's looking for his brothers, and that man tells him that his brothers had gone even further beyond Shechem. So if you're thinking about symbolic language, that perhaps what they are about to do when they see Joseph might even be worse than what they did in Shechem to the people of Shechem. At any rate, he goes up to Dothan, and he finds him there, and yes, they do something which is arguably even worse. It wasn't quite as violent because they didn't actually kill Joseph, but they basically, in essence, left him for dead in the pit. Reuben was the only one that seemed terribly concerned about him, even though he didn't stop this horrible ordeal from happening. But Reuben gets visibly upset. I think he's also feeling this time of grief, maybe some guilt in his life for things like sleeping with his father's maidservant, stuff like that. I don't know, lots of crazy emotions going on right now. And it looks like we're only descending further. So they carry out this lie as if they just found this tunic of his, the ornamented tunic, the colorful coat or whatever that Israel had given to Joseph. It's all bloody, looked like he'd been torn apart by savage wild beasts like that deer that we just saw. And Jacob, or Israel, sees it and he thinks he's lost his boy, and he just descends even further into his grief down there in the valley of Hebron. So where are we to look for God's voice in this message? We could imagine that God does not want all this horrible stuff happening. God doesn't want us treating each other like this. God doesn't want us turning our backs on each other like this. God had given these dreams and told Joseph that he was going to rise to power in some kind of way. At this point of the story, it's hard to say that that's what's happening. All we see is some horrible things happening. Later on, we find out that this is definitely a part of the story of how Joseph ends up rising to power. But that leaves the question, is God ordaining these actions that are happening? Is God ordaining these awful things that Joseph's brother does to him in order to bring Joseph to power later on? And that, I don't think so. I think that these were the boys' ideas of acting out, acting badly, just as they had before, and God getting into the situation, figuring out how to work things out for good. So God sends the Ishmaelites in, and the Ishmaelites buy Joseph, which keeps him alive and transports him into Egypt, where some interesting things happen down the line, and we see if God's vision that was given to Joseph ends up playing out. So maybe that's something for us to watch out for today, or to think about today, or to pray about today, is how is God working in our lives for good, and to not just accept every little thing that happens as being something that God wanted to happen, or that God forced to happen, or that God ordained to happen, but as being just things in the situation that God has to work with, just like we have to work with, in order to work things out for good. How is God working in your life right now, working with the situation that God's been given to bring you up out of a dark place, out of a low place, or maybe you're not even in a low place right now, but how is God working in your situation to bring you to an even better and more beautiful place? So that I invite you to think about with me this morning as we drink our coffee and pray and think and contemplate about these stories happening in the Bible, and as we watch out for more wildlife, of course. The picture this week is still up for grabs. What is this? We've had guesses of it being Rebecca's tomb. We've had a guess of being Isaac's tomb. Neither of those are quite it, but very, very strong guesses. Don't want to say too much more, as I feel like this is going to get too easy, if it's not too easy already. But this is still the question for you. What is this that we're looking at in the picture? People of God, thank you so very much for being with me here today. I'll watch out for these savage wild beasts out here. You all please do the same in your own lives, and stick by the word of the Lord, stick by the love of the Lord, and see you next time. God bless you. May the Lord give you peace.